good morning, everyone. It's 9 a.m. It's Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. This is the meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board. I'm officially calling it to order. Raymond, would you do roll call, please, and then let us know if we have any public comments?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Wilson? Here. Ms. Masters?
Here.
Mr. McElroy? Here. Mr. Palacios?
Here.
Mr. Lindner?
Here.
Ms. Ortega?
Here.
We do have a quorum, and there were no public comments received.
All right, thank you very much. I'll move to item number 2, which is the adoption of the minutes for the RMA board meeting of November 12th, 2025. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Are there any comments or changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
So I have a motion from Ms. Ortega, a second from Mr. Lindner to approve the minutes as submitted. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Can you check to see if the gentleman who's here to talk about the Transportation Authority wants us to wait for him to get here, or what?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Ando, we see you online. Would you like to present early, or would you like us to wait for you to try to get down here?
He responded, he said he's on landing on a plane, so I think it's best that we wait for him.
Okay, he's landing now? Okay, fine. I didn't know, we didn't know what his schedule was going to be. So we'll wait, and hopefully we'll dispense with other business before he gets here. Having said that, we'll move to item 3, which is discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of work authorization number 11 with HNTB Corporation and an associated budget transfer for submittal of a grant application to TxDOT's off-system rail grade separation state fund program for a pedestrian crossing at the Medical Center of the Americas.
Okay. Raymond Tays, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. So this item we're very excited to bring back to you. As you may recall, we brought this to you last month asking for authorization to submit a grant application to this program. This is the off-grade rail grade or off-system rail grade separation state fund program of TxDOT, which consists of about $250 million from the legislature to make crossings more available throughout the state. So we submitted, it's a 2-step process. There's a preliminary application, and then if you're approved, you can advance to the detailed application. We submitted under the preliminary application, and I'm happy to report that we were approved to advance to the detailed application. So what you see before you is bringing on HNTB to provide those grant writing support services. The original application was submitted by staff. RMA staff developed it and submitted it. It was fairly straightforward, but as you can imagine, the detailed application process is a lot more detailed. Well, that's obvious, right? I use the same term, but it's a lot more intense. So we're bringing HNTB on to handle that for us. The fee and scope are included as part of your backup. I would mention very recently, and then we talked about this, I believe, last month or the month prior, HNTB helped us in writing grants for the Howard Low project out of Horizon and also for the Alamo Alto Phase 4 project for the county. Both of them were successful as well. So we're hoping for a third successful grant application to be submitted here. I believe the due date is January 19th, so it's a pretty quick turnaround. We've already begun asking for letters of support from some of our stakeholders and very excited about this opportunity. So happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I would recommend approval of this item.
Are there any questions?
Just one. So I looked at the scope of work for a grant application. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the review process that goes into your review of what they're doing for a $73,000 fee on a grant application.
You mean on the RMA side?
Yeah.
Well, so it starts with the grant program. So there's a program that's developed by TxDOT, and I'm not sure if I included it in your backup, but I can certainly provide it to you all. So it's, I don't know, 20, 30 pages worth of details in terms of what the application requirements are, and most importantly, the evaluation criteria. So as they're developing the response is, really ultimately, they're doing the heavy lifting, they're doing the grant writing, and then it'll come to me and I'll tweak it, I'll put the RMA spin on it, and that's really the interplay. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question now.
Yeah, I was trying to get to the $73,000 fee based on the scope of work.
I see.
But
Well,
you've got a process, and so that's my only question, so I'll move to approve.
well, let me touch on that a little bit more, because the number is significant. But I will tell you, this is in line with the Howard Lowe and the other application, which were for projects that were much smaller. This project construction estimate at this phase, very, very early phase, is upwards of $20 million. So it's a significant project, and a lot of, and this grant program is bigger than I think it's bigger than the TA program, which is what the other two were for. And so, in addition, the original fee and scope was actually quite a bit larger than this. So we were able to scale it back by identifying some materials that were already delivered to the MCA. So we pulled some of those materials. I pulled some work from the scope as well. So I'm handling all of the letters of support and that sort of thing. So we're able to reduce the fee and the scope by doing those things.
Yeah, and when I looked at it, given the fee, the firm will make a lot of money if it's funded and then on the design work. When I looked at the kind of things that were in the scope of work, I was $73,000. It seemed like a big amount given the requirements for the grant application. But if you're saying that you reviewed it and it's in line with projects that you've done recently, I'm comfortable.
Okay, and just a point of clarification though, if we are successful, the terms of these funds that came down from the legislature require TxDOT to handle the design and the construction.
Okay.
So all of us will step back, TxDOT inherits the project and manages it for the partners.
I'll move to approve.
So we have a motion
A second?
and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 4, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of the following instruments as they relate to the acquisition of property for the Dilley, DeLake, and Transit Center project. A, interlocal agreement with the town of Horizon City, and B, work authorization number 72 with Atkins Realis USA, Inc.
Okay, this one we've talked about a few times, or at least this project we have. This is a project that we're helping the town of Horizon City develop, which includes 2 roadways and a transit facility. As we are advancing the design step for this particular project, the town has identified a different drainage facility location, and that is going to require certain right-of-way acquisitions, so 7 parcels in particular. So what you see before you today then under 4A is an interlocal agreement with the town of Horizon City to provide the funding for us to do those property acquisitions. And then item 4B is a work authorization with Atkins Realis for them to come on and actually do the activities. Now I would note the interlocal is drafted so that the funds that are being provided are to provide the acquisition services, but do not include the actual purchase price, nor do they include any eminent domain activities. So if we come into a situation where eminent domain is required, we'll get together with the town of Horizon City, see if they want to handle it, see if they want us to handle it. In prior projects with the town of Horizon City, they have handled eminent domain on their own, so there's some opportunities there to work through that. The purchase price, though, that happens later. We will develop the appraisals and that sort of thing. We'll identify proposed purchase offer prices, and if the town of Horizon City approves of those offer prices, then we'll submit those to the owner. If we're in agreement, then that's a separate ask of Horizon City, and they'll provide funding to us, and it goes from there. But anyhow, that's a model that we developed with the city of El Paso, and it works well, so we're rolling it out here again. Happy to answer any questions on this one again, but would recommend approval of both.
Are there any questions or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of an amendment to work authorization number 1 with HDR Engineering, Inc. for an extension of the Tornillo Guadalupe Port of Entry study schedule.
This is a quick one. We're just extending the project schedule time for this one through October of 2026. And when we originally posted the backup, it had an end date much sooner than, I want to say it was March or April of 26. We're actually extending it out to October. And the reason for that is there's a couple of reasons. This project, at least some of the activities that HDR was involved in, were put on hold while the community had the conversation about whether commercial activity would continue at the Bridge of the Americas. That impacted some of the models that they were developing, so that put us on hold for a bit. In addition, they held back while we brought on the Hunt Institute for some of the data that they were developing. And then lastly, there are a couple of presentations that the county has asked HDR to provide that run into 2026. So extending this project term out to October 2026 covers all of that, and there's no increase in cost for that extension. So I would recommend approval of this one as well.
Yes.
One question. Does the extension allow them to work with the MPO on the work that they're doing also?
That has always been part of the scope, yes, sir.
I'll move to approve.
So we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 6, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution and submittal of documentation of eminent domain authority to the Texas Comptroller as required.
This is an annual requirement that entities that have eminent domain powers must comply with. So it's basically a checklist of, have we used eminent domain, do we plan to use eminent domain, and that sort of thing. So I would recommend approval of this item as well.
Move to approve.
I have a motion
Second?
and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 7, presentation and discussion on change orders recently approved by the Executive Director for the Fabens Airport Hangar Expansion Project.
Okay, we've got a quick PowerPoint that I'll run through for us here once we bring it up. It does deal with the hangars project out at the Fabens Airport. As you know, the Executive Director is authorized to execute these provided they're under 100,000. This is the project. These are the prior, and this is part of your backup, which is why I'm burning through these pretty quickly. These are the prior change orders that have been executed for this project. The latest one is number 19, and this was signed, I want to say yesterday or maybe the day before. This is to relocate some of the exit signs, literally those red signs that you see by the door, relocate a few of them and add a couple more for a total of just over $5,000. This was reviewed and approved by the county, and of course it's using county funds. So this was approved, and that's all I have for you. So no action is required on this item.
Okay, thank you. So number 8 is presentation, discussion, and action on the RMA's proposed communications plan. I actually got the newsletter yesterday, the little bulletin with the project updates, and I thought it was really well done.
Excellent. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. So that ties into this item very well. The RMA is required to adopt a strategic plan every 2 years. And one of the items within that strategic plan is the development of a communications plan. And so, as you know, we got sidetracked a little bit, but we're back on track. We've got a new communications and outreach consultant working for us. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Martin Bartlett, who's going to walk us through the communications plan that we've generally put together, and we're going to seek some input from you today as well.
Green, okay, green means go. That should be easy enough, right? Madam Chair, it's good to be with you this morning. Members of the board, a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And it is always a pleasure to be talking about two things that I am very passionate about, infrastructure and communications. So this is really kind of the core of what I find fascinating, and what I know Kelvin has heard me talk about many times, is if we can make folks understand infrastructure, they can get excited about it. So again, my name is Martin Bartlett. I've had the pleasure of working with and knowing many of you. I work with Consor Engineers, which is largely known for our design work across the country in more than 70 offices from coast to coast. Most of my colleagues are engineers, planners. We do have a strategic planning and communications group that I work with. And what we seek to do is help organizations like the RMA create environments, conversational environments in which the good policy decisions that you as a board make have the very best chance of being accepted, adopted, and carried forward by the community and partners. So that's a little bit about Consor. Now I'm going to tell you something about you that you all already know and that Raymond mentioned earlier. Why are we here today? Because in response to Goal 3 of the RMA strategic plan, the RMA is tasked with creating and developing a communications plan. And there were some very high-level bullet points laid out in the strategic plan that were guiding us as we began the process of working with CRRMA staff to begin figuring out what are the outlines of what a successful communications plan might look like. So what we would like to do today is update the board on the work that is already underway, get feedback on some of our high-level thoughts, some of the outlined approaches and assumptions, and also provide a timeline on delivery and execution of the plan. A little bit about what we are talking about when we say develop a communications plan. We really think of this as translating your strategic plan, that larger strategic guiding document, into outward messages and a plan for how those outward messages can be carried forward. Of course, we all know that the way you would speak to other elected officials, the way you would speak to members of the community, the way you would speak to nonprofit organizations is different. So the communications plan really begins with understanding who are the audiences, what are the profiles of those audiences, and then what are the key messages and talking points that can be as resonant as possible with those key audiences. It is not to say that we say one thing out of one side of our mouth, another thing out of the other, but we do recognize that there are probably drivers that differ between different audiences, and how we convey those drivers should differ as well. We are also going to go through some of our recommended tactics and some of the campaign strategies that we are going to recommend. And it's great to have all of those things down on paper. That's excellent. But the ultimate goal is to get them off paper, out there into the real world. So the strategic communications plan will include roles and responsibilities for who actually is going to be implementing what as part of the plan. So before we go any further, I think I shared that defining our audiences is pivotal to building a successful communications plan. From looking at the strategic plan that the RMA board adopted, it became clear that or as we read it, the two kind of audience groups there on the left in the more pink shades really seems to be who the communications plan is geared to most. Policymakers, the council, the commissioner's court, the legislative delegation, and also what we kind of think of as the authorizing public. Advocates, business groups, the chambers, large institutions, partner organizations like nonprofits. Again, as we read it, those were the audiences that we saw come up most in the section of the strategic plan that spoke about communication. However, that is not to say that you would be well served by dismissing the audience groups that you see kind of more on the blue side, folks that are driving on the roadways, folks that are using Sun Cycle bikes, visitors to the community that are using the Weiler Aerial Tramway one day, and also the broader community, folks who live here, pay taxes here, have their quality of life and their commutes impacted by the work the RMA does. Again, still focusing on the policymakers and the authorizing publics, but recognizing the facility users and the broader community have a direct line to city council, commissioner's court, nonprofit organizations. And then we started to just kind of, at a very high level, toy around with some proposed key messaging themes. These are not necessarily the key messages themselves, but we really kept coming back to the idea that the strategic leadership, technical expertise, and commitment to innovation really is the differentiator for why communities like El Paso create RMAs, and specifically this RMA has delivered transformational projects from one side of the region to the other. So really focusing on the transformational nature of the work that's been done by the RMA. We also saw multimodality coming up multiple times in the strategic plan, recognizing that without partners, the RMA is not going to be able to achieve its goals. And those partners also rely on the RMA to achieve theirs. So really highlighting the partnerships that exist and that the RMA facilitates. Another item we saw coming up in the strategic plan that we would recommend integrating into the key messaging themes goes back to transparency, that the organization is run with good governance in the plain light of day, and that you as a board are ready, willing, and able to discuss and answer questions about the decision-making that you all have undertaken. So that's been a very high level, very kind of quick run through of some of the kind of guiding thoughts on the strategic communications plan that we're putting together. What I'd like to do in the next couple of slides is really dive into some areas where we really need the board's feedback. We've made some assumptions, and we want to test them and make sure that we're assuming the right thing. So if you'll indulge me just a moment, the next handful of slides, we're really going to take an opportunity to imagine we're in a strategic planning session in a boardroom. Madam Chair, yes?
Can we ask questions before we get into this?
Absolutely,
I don't want to
absolutely.
interrupt the
No,
presentation.
please do, I apologize.
So if you go back to the first slide with the stakeholders,
Yes,
the one thing that was missing under policymakers were like the smaller regional jurisdictions, because a lot of our work are really done with like Horizon
Right.
City, Vinton, and I don't know if you want to just say regional municipal entities, because they're not necessarily under the commissioner's
Right.
court, they're independent. And so I'd really like to have them, I mean, we don't have to list them,
Sure.
but you know, I still think we should say like local municipal entities or something, regional municipal entities.
fantastic.
That would be important, I think. And then, I mean, the authorizing public, the larger institutions and business groups, I think those are pretty self-encompassing. But that was one thing that struck me when I saw that. Thank
Great
you.
feedback, thank you. I do want, does anyone else have any thoughts on these kind of communications audiences before we move any further? My pleasure. So what we would like to do is talk in the next slides a little bit about the work that is already underway, some of the possible recommendations building upon that work. Madam Chair, you mentioned that the e-newsletter went out and landed in your inbox yesterday. Glad to know you received it. We are resuming quarterly distribution of the e-newsletter going out again this week. We're going to be coming out quarterly. So a newsletter is a newsletter, that's fantastic, but we also wanted to kind of hear from you all, the board, about our proposed recommendations or possible recommendations that may find their way into the plan to really make sure the newsletter does, pulls its weight, so to speak. Let me actually, one other item before we dive into this that I want to talk about is what you're going to hear when we go through these next slides, these more interactive slides, is about kind of what we're calling an integrated content strategy, which is really just a fancy way of saying what you see at the bottom, maximizing the use of the creative content by thoughtfully repurposing it. If we are creating content for the newsletter, it ought to find other homes because we've invested the time, we've invested the resources in creating it, and there's no guarantee that everyone in town is going to see that newsletter. In fact, they're likely not. So what are the other platforms we can use to use that content that's created to get as much mileage out of it as possible? Thoughtfully, making sure that we're repurposing it strategically and not just copying and pasting from one platform to another or sharing with partners without context, for example. And we'll talk about kind of the role that I call them original influencers can have in spreading the word. So not TikTok influencers, but community influencers. Okay, so the work that's underway right now, again, we mentioned the e-newsletter is coming back out quarterly. Some proposals that we would recommend to make sure the newsletter really pulls its weight and fits into that integrated space is richer, more resonant content. And what I describe richer and more resonant as is focus on the community, not the concrete. We know that project delivery is key to what the RMA does, but at the end of the day, who's going to be using it? Who's going to benefit from that project? That is the story, not so much, no offense to the engineers in the room, it's not the beams, it's not the girders, it's the people that are going to be using the facility. We would also recommend considering inclusion of video storytelling components. We know now more than ever, folks are not sitting down and watching the 6 o'clock news or picking up the newspaper. So if we can create our own video content to tell the stories about, again, those community-driven impacts of the RMA and its projects, we believe there will be an opportunity to expand the community's understanding of the good work the RMA is already doing. And of course, we're going to continue reviewing the distribution list, make sure folks who aren't on the list have an opportunity to get that information. Another item we would also consider recommending is amplifying the newsletter and again, repurposing that content onto existing CRRMA social media platforms. Sorry.
Question. When we approved the original contract, given that we weren't doing much at the time and the staff were trying to get things going again, I remember not seeing social media in the contract language, or it may have been in there in a small way. But so much of what we see, like if you have a good newsletter, you can get 5 social media pieces out of it, right? If you have a groundbreaking, it's a great piece for social media. If you have a project completion, all of that stuff. But for the fee, I was like, you probably don't get social media for that. Going forward, I wonder, we probably should have budgeted for it, too late for that now, but I would like to see the RMA use a significant amount more social media to amplify, to take newsletter pieces, projects you're complete, all of that kind of stuff. Because I was telling a couple of people at work, I have a board meeting this morning, I'm gonna head down to CRRMA. The 4 people I was talking to, 3 of them were like, what's that? Right? And so I think there's a huge opportunity to get more word out about the good work that the RMA does.
We agree. So the contract that you're referring to with Consor, the intention there was just to get back up and running. We identified a couple of very specific items. The newsletter, we wanted to get that up and running very quickly. We knew we could knock that out pretty easily. And then it was this communications plan, because this communications plan is going to get the input from you, and we're hearing social media is important. We're going to develop the plan, and then from there we can then go out and identify the resources and increase the contract. So the contract was a quick fix, sort of a Band-Aid approach to get them on board to develop the plan, and then we'll come back with a new contract. And so we also recognize that our outreach, the resources needed for outreach will exceed the 50,000 that are in the original contract. That 50,000 is a limitation that the executive director has to go out and pull somebody. So we've got to go through the process to bring somebody on board to do those bigger steps once the plan is in place. So I think we're headed in that direction.
And that does align with our idea of, again, getting as much mileage as we can out of the content that is created, because it is an investment of time and energy to create the content. So let's make sure as many eyes get on it as possible. Media communications is another item that was specifically called out in the strategic plan. The work that's underway, really, frankly, led by RMA staff, making sure news releases get out, media inquiries get responded to in a timely fashion, interview requests are granted. Another item that we would propose or are likely to propose in the plan is just refreshing the media list, really making sure we understand what is the current environment in terms of who are the leaders, who do we need to be engaging with that may not have existed the last time the media list was built. Another item that again goes to that idea of repurposing and getting as much mileage out of the created content as possible would be handout video. If, for example, video storytelling is something the board is interested in moving forward with, our recommendation would be, and what we have seen increasingly is media outlets are very comfortable. Once upon a time, they weren't using handout videos. So providing them with the video, the photos, to help tell the story, so they don't have to, trek all the way out to a project site. They can go ahead, get the video via an FTP site or other shared site, and then help tell the story from there. Another item that is not specifically in Consor's purview is the RMA website. That effort's being led by Hello Amigo, and the redesign of the website is underway. But again, back to that integrated content approach, repurposing some of the newsletter content as appropriate on the website. Once we've created it for the newsletter, it may have a home on the website. Sometimes items that are created for the website can also have a home in the newsletter. You really kind of start to see all of these platforms amplifying similar content. Another item very important, making sure that we have an integrated sign-up widget for the e-newsletter in the redesigned website. If folks are going to be at the website, we want to give them an opportunity to seamlessly sign up for the RMA newsletter. Another item we're likely to propose, develop potentially an interactive map at some level of interactivity, very clearly showing these are the projects the RMA has delivered for this community, and these are the projects that are under development. Because when you look at the map, and if we can boil it down in a way that is easy to understand, not super technical, it is an impressive list of projects that affect, again, the quality of life and mobility from one side of El Paso County to the other. Beyond the website, informational briefings were called out specifically in the strategic plan. Again, led by the RMA, Consor is happy to support RMA staff largely identifying the opportunities, providing the presentations, Consor providing some kind of messaging help, some graphical lift behind the scenes. And here's another place to, again, consider repurposing either video content, photographic content, graphical content, to really make sure that we get as much mileage out of that content as possible. Last but not least, another area that we at Consor aren't leading on, but happy to report on, the project branding signage. Again, we understand that the design and inclusion in plan sets is underway to make sure that when folks are rolling up on an RMA project, they know that but for the RMA, this project might not be delivered. So those are some of the general areas, some of the high-level greatest hits of what we expect to find its way into the communications plan. Would love to hear from the board if we missed anything or if you'd like me to go back over anything and flesh it out in greater detail.
Is this primarily going to be like a poll type method, so people are going to have to go to the website to see any of this content, or is there going to be some push mechanism there? Because most people, if they don't know about the RMA, they're not going to be going to the RMA website to be seeing what's going on. There's lots of other, TikTok, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. Social media was mentioned, but like FitFam El Paso, that is where people get all of their information in this area. So something like that would be beneficial to get information out on the projects we're working on.
Agree 100%. My early recommendation is the right size approach is very important. We want to walk before we run. So what we are largely envisioning is recommending, again, if the newsletter content finds its way onto one of the social platforms that the RMA already owns, consider placing a little bit of money on those posts. You can really target them very narrowly. You can really find your audience. So there is, I think, there is, no offense to the RMA website, but we know it's not one of the biggest draws on the internet. So again, we would be foolish to recommend waiting for folks to find us. We do recommend some limited opportunities to go out there and find folks who maybe don't know about the RMA, don't know that they're interested in what the RMA is doing.
So as part of your plan, are you going to have like strategic recommendations of where to launch in social media, how to roll it out, what the priorities and things are?
Yes, yes. We will not go so far, I think, at this level to say, this is an amount that you should spend, this is a posting schedule, but it will include some high-level looks at what platforms make sense. I think there are platforms that make sense for the RMA. There are platforms that I think won't make sense for the RMA.
Yeah, because I'd like to invest our resources where we're going to maximize the impact of them.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, we have like El Paso Matters, which is a digital media that's got a pretty big following. We have the El Paso Inc., which is the business magazine. They seem to have a pretty big following. Their digital is not as good as it could be, but still, I think there are opportunities. Like I mentioned to somebody, I don't know if it was your firm or another, when we first went down this, that every board meeting we should look at what's on the agenda, and if there's something noteworthy, we should just do a quick press release. Like today, we're doing the one on, where was the one I was looking at? The grade separation for the MCA, big partnership. We're working on a big grant. It has a huge impact for that area. Something like that, we're helping to advance fund, grant application to get something like this done. It's a safety, aesthetic, whatever. Quick thing, when I look at the Inc., they have notices about, somebody got appointed here, there, anywhere, and it's sort of like, yeah, but these are like really big things that impact, the economic development of the community, and they're low-hanging fruit. You can do it at 5 minutes. So I think the focus should be every agenda is what's newsworthy on this agenda. And then at the end, today the RMA met, this is what they did, this is how it impacts you, yada, yada, yada. You get a little blurb. And I even think doing some small advertising with those two entities would actually help boost our profile, but also give them incentive to, like, when we want to do stories and stuff, to have an opportunity for them to do more detailed features and stuff like that.
And that goes exactly to this idea of refreshing the media list.
Okay.
When the media list that was created was created, we didn't see organizations like El Paso Matters
Yeah.
So it really is important to make sure, because the media landscape is changing so fast. Again, I'm a former broadcast journalist, and it's a different landscape than it was when I was working in TV news 15, 20 years ago.
And I'm sure there's some social media platforms too that we could hook up with that are sort of business oriented, or even some of the neighborhood things. And then the other thing I was thinking of on like all these government partners, like the city, county, et cetera, we should make sure we've got a link, that they've got a link, like RMA is on there somewhere, because for most of these people, we're their public works department. And we're a huge partner for them, and so it'd be an easy way for them to add us onto their website. So there's a link for RMA projects in your community. Click here or something like that. I'm just looking for things that are easy, that probably, I mean, they may, even if they cost, they're not going to be a huge cost, kind of low-hanging fruit that would really kind of get us out there a little quicker and faster maybe.
Yeah, and in our, like, when you look at the public, they want to know about certain things, right? What are we doing that's going to improve their quality of life? So whether it's transportation, you know, their commutes and things like that, or entertainment type things, activities, and the tax dollars, right? How are we helping to bring down costs or bringing in more revenue or something like that for the community? Yeah, we definitely need to get that strategic communication out there in a more proactive approach versus folks, you know, having to spend their limited amount of time trying to go and search for information. Like anything with the Weiler tram, like that's a big thing. And I'd venture to say the majority of the community have no clue that that's even going on. So it just shows an opportunity for us to get information out there via the platforms they're already on.
And I think the non-road, the non-vehicular activities we're doing are also pretty noteworthy. I mean, we've got our bike program, which is really popular, and we're trying to grow it. And I'm not sure how many people know we even run it. And so there's a way to maybe boost that a little bit. We talked about the tram. We're doing the bike lanes and all the sidewalks and stuff in the rural areas, and you know, there's like those types of things, and the hangar, the Tornillo, the airport, the Fabens Airport, and the project out there, the things we're doing for that program. I mean, there's just some things that are kind of non-traditional that you don't think about that the RMA is actually really helping to drive, and so those are things I think we need to promote as well.
You know, I think you're exactly right. When people see the RMA, when they think about the RMA, and even the logo, they see a road. So if we can expand their understanding of what the RMA delivers for the community well beyond not just roadways, but beyond exclusively roadways, to really creating a multimodal network, and frankly, exciting projects, like I said, like the tram.
One other point, Fort Bliss. We need to incorporate Fort Bliss into any of these marketing plans or communications plans. I think a lot of information doesn't make it over to Fort Bliss, and those folks, they tend to be internalized, you know, and insulated from the rest of the community, but then they go out and they go to restaurants and they go to do things out in town, but then they go back to their homes, which are on Fort Bliss. So I think any marketing plan, any type of communications plan needs to figure out how to incorporate Fort Bliss into that.
Fantastic.
Do you have like contact points for them?
Yeah.
You could provide
the Garrison
them?
Commander's office is probably the best best point of contact for that. They have a public affairs office there, so you push anything out to them, they're going to get it out into the community there at Fort Bliss.
Would you just make sure they have all that information then? Okay, thank you. Yes?
I agree with all of the
Turn your
comments
mic
that are
on.
being made because of the fact that I'll repeat myself. I agree with all of the comments that are being made is that nobody really knows what the RMA does, and there's been a lot of wonderful projects that have been taking place over the years. And my question goes more to, I know that news releases and all of those, you know, getting the list of the media, all of that is free. But where the cost is going to be is with the production, especially for instance, the videos that you're talking about, that it would be great to provide them because they will use them, because they're already there and it's easier for them to use them. Will the production cost be something that will be reasonable and that this organization will be able to afford to do? Is that doable?
I actually think we can build it into our budget. We build it into our project management as part of either our admin fee or project management fee somehow. And it's kind of diluted across all the projects, so it's not one big hit on anything. But I do think we need to think that through. Because the communities that we're working for are going to benefit from the communication about it, because it's good for them politically as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if we could also get assistance from them in terms of actually getting their message out, and in terms of what the organization, whether it be the county or the city, that they are willing to actually be part of it in order to inform the community as to what's going on. That would be great.
So a couple of notes. That contract that I mentioned with Consor, it has 2 very specific tasks, and then it has a catch-all for anything that comes up down the road. So that could include video, it could include that sort of thing. So we do have budget for that we budget annually to cover some of those expenses. What I hadn't heard or thought of before is the idea of putting it into a project cost. And that's a very interesting concept for me. So I'll think through that and play around with it. But we do have the ability to do it within the budget that the board has approved, that the board approves each year with its annual budget.
And we do have some monies that, they were kind of residuals that we benefited from paying things off earlier. And we've been really careful about not using them. But I mean, we could tap into a small amount of that to sort of seed this, so we launch it appropriately and we do it well. But I do think going forward, when we look at projects we're working on, I mean, we have an admin cost and we have a project administration cost. I don't know why we couldn't build a piece like for the communications component where we produce photos of the construction, communications updates, whatever, on behalf of those respective communities. We're kind of doing it for them. We give it to them as well, and we promote them as well as we're promoting the RMA. I would think in general, most of them would probably be okay with that, and I don't think it would impact the project costs substantially. You know, I mean, if you took 1% or something like that, a small percentage of the overall project costs, and build it into the communications and outreach component, more generic, I think it would be an easy way to kind of absorb it and give us a budget to do things that we want to do without feeling overly sensitive that we're spending money.
Yes, ma'am.
But once you develop the plan and put some dollars with it, I think that's when we have the conversation, do we want to seed it with the money we have in our reserves right now and launch it so we get it going and then build from there.
And if I can share one thing on cost, the reality is attention spans have shortened. People's expectations have shortened or have changed with what they are willing to consume. So I would advise against investing big bucks in 5 to 8 minute documentary pieces on any of the projects. I mean, this is a very, I would recommend keeping to a polished but somewhat guerrilla style content plan that really focuses on people's attention spans are not going to last through 5 minutes of the whole backstory on any particular project.
I actually think the point we're making is we want you all to give us a budget that you feel is reasonable to get the impact we want, but not overly expensive that is going to have diminished value. So
Perfect. This has been a very robust and frankly energizing conversation. Are there any other areas before we dive into kind of what the schedule looks like and when you can expect to see us again come back to you? All right. So next slide, we're talking about transportation. So we have a roadmap. Again, the contract with Consor was executed back in October 2025. Again, we have spent some time getting things back on track, getting the first newsletter out, providing some communications materials related to Pelicano. So here we are today in December of 2025, hearing from you, the board. We expect to be back in front of you in 2026 to review the plan with the board and also identify what are some of those resource gaps. This is what we have proposed. This is what we think might be necessary to help achieve it. And then from there, we will work on an ongoing execution plan to make sure that we get the bang for the buck that the board is after. And that's us.
So I know the planning committee meets monthly, right, pretty much, or fairly regularly?
Not monthly. I had a health deal, so we missed one. but-
Okay, do you think it'd be worthwhile to take this through the committee and vet it
Yeah. I think
before we
so.
come back to the board? Just say, because at the committee level, you can actually spend a little more time drilling down than when we get here. We've got like other agenda items. So before you bring it back to the board, once you're ready, why don't we take it through the planning committee? The board members on there, I think would provide good insight in terms of whether they think it's got what we want or it's lacking in anything. Then you can make the adjustments and bring it back to the board.
Perfect.
Yes, ma'am, we'll do that. All right, thank you.
all.
Thank you, Martin.
So is the gentleman here yet?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, he is?
Mr. Ando has
Oh,
landed.
hi, sorry. I didn't know who you were when you came in, so let me read the item. Presentation, discussion, and action on the following items as they relate to the El Paso Area Transportation Services. Local Government Corporation, known locally as the El Paso Transportation Authority. This morning, we have a briefing from the ETA, and then followed by a board resolution authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement to provide certain communication and outreach services. Welcome, thank you.
If-
Madam Chair and members of the board.
Actually, if you don't mind, if you allow me 1 second just to introduce you and kind of walk the board through what we're doing. No problem. So this item does two things. The first one is a briefing from Mr. Ando, who's the executive director of the ETA. And I thought we did this not too long ago, but we do have 4 new board members, and Mr. Ando was not with the organization at that time. The organization is going through quite a transition right now, so I thought it was really important for them to come and brief you all and interact with you all. So thank you, Mr. Ando, for rushing over here from the airport and presenting to us. The second item, though, really is the reason why I asked Mr. Ando to speak to us. It's a proposed interlocal agreement where we would provide outreach and communication services to the ETA, and that's through Mr. Bartlett, who just spoke with us before. So as Mr. Ando ramps up his organization, you hear a lot about that right now. We want to be a service to him, and the first, of course, not the first one. We're working on the transit facility for him. We're working on passenger shelters and that sort of thing. But another major activity that we want to provide is outreach services. So that's what you see under item 9B, and that has been approved by his board already. So with that, then I'll turn it over to Mr. John Ando, who's the executive director of the ETA. Thank you, John.
Yes, top of the morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm here to give you a presentation about who the El Paso Transportation Authority is. So this is our mission statement, and our main focus is to provide safe, reliable, and accessible transportation solutions that connect the rural communities of El Paso County. So basically, the El Paso Transportation Authority is commonly known as the El Paso Area Transportation Services Local Government Corporation. We're formed as a local government corporation under Chapter 437 of the Texas Transportation Code, and our main charge is to provide public transportation services throughout El Paso County outside of the city limits of the city of El Paso, since they have a mass transit department that's responsible for providing those services. We were created by El Paso County in December of 2020. We're presently staffed by the El Paso County Transit Operations Department, so I'm also a county employee, and I'm also the county's Director of Transit Operations concurrently as the ETA Executive Director. We do contract with the Rio Grande Council of Governments to act as our fiscal and administrative agent, and we do contract with Kemp Smith to provide legal services. Our history goes back to 1994 when the first countywide transit study was developed. And then the county elected to form a rural transit program under county government in 1995. And then over the course of years, we've added services such as a relationship with New Mexico Department of Transportation, a van pool program, and partnerships with Sun Metro. In 2020, as I mentioned, EPATS was created. In 2024, we've added more member agencies to join EPATS, such as Clint and Anthony. We've expanded our services. We rebranded from the name El Paso County Transit to ETA, and I'll be going through each of the sub-services we operate. And then we also started paratransit services. And then in June of 2025, I was hired as the first director of the department, as well as the first executive director of EPATS. So our board of directors consists of 12 members. 3 of them are representing El Paso County. 1 are from each of the jurisdictions: Clint, Anthony, Vinton, Horizon City, and San Elizario. We also have ex officio from El Paso MTO, Sun Metro, Socorro, and what is known as the West Texas Transportation Planning Committee, or WETEP. I presently have a staff of 5. We'll be adding an additional 3 more positions to complement the overall services that EPATS will be providing. We have an Access Advisory Committee, and then we also contract all of our services to private companies. TransDev runs the main public transit system, Enterprise Mobility runs our van pool program, and then through the Department of Transportation in New Mexico, All Aboard America runs our commuter bus to Las Cruces. Our service hours are 7 days a week, excluding 7 major holidays. We primarily run 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturdays, and 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sundays. And I'll be going through the various services that we offer. So Paseo is the name of our fixed route system. If you see these cutaways running around the rural areas of the county, those are basically the fixed routes that we operate. Oops. There we go. We have 6 fixed routes that connect the communities to El Paso, and we meet Sun Metro at each of its transit centers, whether it's Mission Valley, West Side, Upper East Side, or the Downtown Transit Center. Access is our paratransit service. These are vans that we operate, and those are for people who have disabilities that cannot ride Paseo bus services. We operate Access within a 3/4 mile of our fixed routes throughout the county, and then with an interlocal with Sun Metro, we actually do all the trips in El Paso for those that live outside of the city limits of El Paso. If you live in the city limits of El Paso, Sun Metro Lyft will actually pick you up and take you to areas outside of the city of El Paso within the 3/4 mile boundaries of our routes. So this way provides a seamless ride to those that have disabilities, and we don't have to do transfers between the 2 services. Andale is our new microtransit service that we just launched in the town of Clint and the city of San Elizario. It's a door-to-door service. Think of it as Uber. Basically, you can order the service by calling us 15 minutes in advance. Soon you'll be able to order trips on an app. It runs the same service hours as Paseo, and it's really meant to connect the South County communities to Socorro, as well as to Mission Valley Transit Center and El Paso Community College. Vamanos Van Pool program is a commuter program that we have with Enterprise. Basically, commuter groups can form a group. We'll subsidize those vans at $500 per month per van. And as long as the trip originates or ends in El Paso County, they can be a participant in our Vamanos Van Pool program. The New Mexico Park and Ride Express is a commuter service that operates between downtown El Paso, the town of Anthony, to Las Cruces, New Mexico. It does run Monday through Friday from about 4:30 in the morning to 8:30 at night, and that's $3 to utilize that service. And it's a great way for those that go to the university in New Mexico, or a way to connect the 2 communities together. This gives you a perspective of our performance of the ETA system. We carried about 572,000 unlinked passenger trips last fiscal year. In fiscal year 24, we did 559,000 unlinked passenger trips. So the service expansion that we've done is demonstrating that the system is performing in the expectations of our member agencies. This gives you a perspective of our statistics. This is reported to the Texas Transportation Dashboard. For fiscal year '24, we did about 9.1 million in revenues and 9.1 million in expenditures. 54% of our budget comes from the federal government, 6%, about 7% comes from the state, and 39% come from local governments. El Paso County contributes the lion's share of the local match, approximately 88% of that 39%. And then we spend about 68% on contracted transportation, 24% on capital expenses, 6% on administration, and about less than 1% on planning activities. And this is just additional statistics that you can read in your packet at your leisure on ETA's performance. With the help of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority, we're doing a lot of capital improvements. One of our projects is putting signs at every bus stop in El Paso County so that people can know where to catch our buses, and that's a design of what the new sign will look like. And then we're also installing bus shelters throughout the county in various jurisdictions so people have a comfortable, safe place to catch ETA buses. And then our biggest project is the transit operations and maintenance facility that's proposed to be constructed on Windermere Avenue. Thanks to the help of your staff at the RMA, we've been able to purchase the land. And then working with TxDOT, we were just recently awarded $12.8 million in federal funds, as well as associated state local matching funds for a total of $16 million to build this facility. So we're well on our way to having our first transit operations and maintenance facility, and we'll no longer have to lease space from Sun Metro. We connect to multiple transit providers in the El Paso region. Primarily, we connect to Sun Metro. We also connect to South Central Regional Transit District for trips to Sunland Park, New Mexico, Socorro's new microtransit system, and then Las Cruces Roadrunner Transit. We also partner with various technological firms so that people can access ETA information at the tip of their hands. You can download the Transit app or the Move It app. You'll be able to plan your trip, pay your fare, track our buses in real time, and schedule trips on our on-delay system. And perhaps potentially in the future, if we can partner with the RMA on bike share, be able to unlock bicycles with this app. We also have our routes and bus stops in Google Maps and Apple Maps. We have a lot of upcoming projects coming our way in the upcoming year. Passenger amenities, service enhancements, new contracts with our vendors, partnerships with Sun Metro. One of the big things that we are in the process of doing is separating from El Paso County, so we'll be independent. Our goal is by September 1 of '26, once we receive the direct recipient status from the Federal Transit Administration, as well as the Rural Transit District status from TxDOT. That will allow us to basically apply for our own grants and fund our operations directly. We'll be adding additional positions. We'd like to expand bike share into other communities in our service area, so we'd like to partner with the RMA on that, and continuing to add more technology, make it easier and attractive to use our system. We've had a lot of accomplishments. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they are in the presentation in your packet if you'd like to read through them. But we've been very busy the last 6 months, and we're going to continue to be busy for the upcoming years as we create our new transit authority here in El Paso County. It's my contact information if you want to learn more about the ETA, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Glad to see this moving forward. Good presentation. Any discussion or questions from the board?
What's the cost of the service?
Right now, we're $1.50, but we are going to Commissioner's Court on Monday to possibly make ETA fare free as a pilot for 1 year. The ETA board did approve this last week at its board of directors meeting, and we've identified a funding source to cover the fares that previously would have been collected by passengers.
Interesting.
Do you all have any services on Fort Bliss as well?
We have vans that go into Fort Bliss. We have about 8 van pool vans that originate.
That's where I was going to
and,
ask, because I've been at locations where, like the hospital and folks who are working on the post, they'll have a van pool and, partner on that.
Yep.
So, okay, good. Thank you.
Any question?
I think it was the Andale program. Who qualifies for that in terms of calling and scheduling the time for pickup?
Open to anybody.
Really?
Just simply need to give us a call and we'll pick you up.
Thank you.
Of course.
And is that also going to be free, or is that?
Yep,
Is that a s-
yep. Paseo, Access, and Underlay would all be free services.
This is pretty much outside of the fixed route of Sun Metro, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, it's for rural, where the Sun Metro isn't accessible. Good. Glad to see it. I'm glad we can help with that. Any other, any other comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution as read into the record.
I move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. That takes us to item 10. Thank you very much for coming, and really appreciate it. Good presentation. Item 10, reports and updates. We're going to talk about the audit, annual audit and January board meeting date, the 2013 Comprehensive Mobility Plan, and the Pelicano widening project update.
Good morning, Robert Studer, Director of Finance. For the record, so the Finance Committee, after last month's meeting, met and agreed to meet January 20th, the Finance Committee, January 20th at 10 a.m. to review the audit, and that will be done in advance of the board meeting. We've discussed moving the January board meeting back to accommodate getting that done and not having to wait till the middle of February, because that impacts the city. So we're proposing January 28th, 9 a.m. in this room for the board meeting, and wanted to see if that works for you all. January 28th, it's a Wednesday. It's 2 weeks after we normally would have met. And we've already booked this room to make sure we've got it, if that works for you all. Okay. Does anyone else have a conflict with that date? Okay. Then that's what we'll plan on for our board meeting, is January 28th. 9 a.m.
Yes, ma'am.
We've booked it already, yes. All right, well, thank you all for that. The audit, hopefully will get started any day. I would point out we're gonna have two, normally we just have one person doing the day-to-day. This year we're gonna have two people. One is worked on it many years ago. The other person has been working on it for the last 7 or 8 years. But it's gonna be a sprint through the next month for me, and we'll be ready for the Finance Committee in January.
We'll be ready then, you think?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So does that mean we'll cancel the February meeting?
Likely,
I mean,
that's likely,
that would
yes,
be the
ma'am.
recommendation?
Yes, the idea is to cram everything into the end of January, that's the
And
goal.
then anything else, we just hold off till March?
Correct,
All right.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. But at January, you'll kind of know, right?
We should, yes, ma'am.
Whether or not we need to meet, if there's anything coming up?
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Yeah, we'll let you know during that January meeting if there's anything that we're waiting on.
all right. So that's the 28th. Would you send an updated, like, cancel the one and update calendar for the other?
Yes, we usually don't send out invites for the meetings, but we'll send one out for this,
Oh, you
just to
don't?
make
Okay, well,
sure
let me do it
that you
then.
all have it on your.
That's fine,
on
so
your
I'll just do
calendar.
it then. Yeah, see, when I put it in, then I get these invitee things, so. Okay, I'm sending everybody an invite because it's making me do it, whether you want it or not. All right,
So that'll,
you got an invite.
that'll take us
Somebody
to
did.
item 10B, which is a comprehensive mobility plan update. That is part of your backup, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, that'll take us to 10C, which is Pelicano. Very briefly, we are where we said we would be last time when we spoke. So the construction, of course, is underway. The ponds that we discussed we're hoping to wrap those up before too long. That moves us also into the roadway prep, which is going on now. So I believe starting on Monday, they began roadway prep at Loop 375. So that's a very exciting new step. As it relates to the county, they were very interested in sending information out to the community out there. So we've issued postcards within a radius of the roadway, and those went out, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. So that's out there. In the postcard, it included a QR code to get them to our website, which has been updated with the latest information on the project, and we'll continue to update that more frequently now that that's out there. So that's out. Now that we're starting roadway prep work and construction, the county has also asked that we have a media event out there, so we're prepping that. I believe that's scheduled for Monday so that the media can get a view of actual construction activities going on out there on the roadway. So that's happening, I believe, next week as well. So that's where we are. Ponds are underway and road work has now started, so we're on our way. Happy to answer any questions, but with that, I think that's all I have for you for this agenda.
Thank you. No executive session?
No, ma'am.
Just one quick question. How are we on the initial construction estimate coming back from CEA timeline?
That's still due this month, so we haven't received it yet. There's an item that we're waiting on, and I can't remember exactly what it is. Do you remember there's something holding back the, let me think it through, but either way, it's coming this month.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if there are no other items for business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Meeting's adjourned, 10:05 a.m. Thanks and have a happy holiday, everybody.